All right, good afternoon and welcome to Marvel's. Well, I'm sorry, first let's say welcome to Clayton County Library System. This is our virtual graphic novel club. My name is Erica
And
and I'm
I'm rolling.
joined. Yep, there's Roland. So today we are introducing Marvel's The Eternals. So, not a very extensive, but what you're usually used to from us, because The Eternals has only had I guess in total two runs, but we're gonna jump into that. We get the background and history. So, um, you ready, Roland?
Yeah, jump in.
All right, we're as ready as we're gonna be. So, Marvel's Eternals, the Eternals. Here, let's see. There we go. Okay, so origin of this team, the Eternals were actually were created by Jack Kirby, the infamous Jack Kirby, who is beloved to Marvel. You have Captain America, so many. If you can name it, he did it. Pretty much, yeah. So Jack Kirby created this team after he came back to Marvel. He left Marvel in the 70s. Some creative differences, and he wanted a little bit more control over his creations. So he went to DC for a little while in the 70s and he created a um, title for DC that was supposed to be released for a movie this year, directed by Ava DuVernay, which was The New Gods. That series was canceled by DC, so Marvel invited Jack back to. He returned to Marvel in 1975. Um, but he took that story that he had with New Gods and made it into, changed a few things and made it into the Eternals. It was a limited series, ran from 1976 to 1978. It was rebooted again in 1985, and again, it was rebooted again in 2008 by writer Neil Gaiman, who basically rewrote the story that Jack Kirby created. It will be rebooted again this year. It was rebooted again in January of 2021. So a new series is coming out. It is not in graphic novel form yet, but you can go to your local bookstore or wherever you get your comics to start reading the new reboot. Uh, what Kirby wanted to do was sort of give the story of all mankind, all humankind, all he wanted to give a beginning story. And he created these three beings. There's the Celestials, which were godlike robots that go places, create life or destroy life. Um, they were godlike giants. They experimented on lesser forms of just lesser forms, whether it be alien or humanity. Um, what they did when they came to Earth is they created 100 Eternals and 100 Deviants, and they left. That's the first time. So the Eternals are like an ancient subspecies of humans with godlike abilities. The Deviants were unstable. They were created by the Celestials also, but they were genetically unstable and mutated. They looked more like monsters and things like that. So the Eternals were given the superior genetics and the Deviants were given the unstable genetics. And then the Celestials left. They disappeared. They came back. Deviants by that time had taken control of the Earth. Human beings were slaves to Deviants, and they had ruled for about 20,000 years at this. When the Celestials returned to Earth the next time, they fought a war and defeated the Deviants, freeing the human beings. The Deviants went underground, then the humans started to prosper. Amongst those were the Eternals. They excelled during this time, as humans prospered, because they made themselves a part of like human folklore. And we'll get into that a little bit as we talk about each of the characters. But they emulated Greek gods. They were sometimes mistaken for Greek gods, and that was on purpose in a sense. They made their home base in the Serbian mountains, and they called it Olympia. They are immortal. They have total control over their bodies down to their cells. Their molecules can be sort of dissipated, but they can be brought back together too. So really, there is no death for them. It's kind of like a pause in their lives for them. They all possess superhuman strength, telepathy, flight, teleportation, illusion casting. They can transmutate organic and inorganic matter. Each of them have different forms of manipulating energy within their bodies, including force, heat, and light, and electromagnetic radiation. Some of them have devoted themselves to specializing in like particular things, and we'll talk about that as we talk about each of them, and specific powers. And they have, when they increase their powers in one way, it decreases their powers in other ways. So as we talk about each one of them have sort of a specialty they have, but when they do this, one of their other powers is lesser and lesser. So as some of them have mastered certain things, but it's at the cost of other things. So that is it about the Eternals. Roland, you want to take over the Celestials?
Yeah, we can jump in on the Celestials. They were, like Erica said before, they were these powerful extraterrestrial beings that came in. In the comics, they look like gigantic robots. There's only been one other character in Marvel, in the Marvel comics, that has ever bested a Celestial, basically utilizing their same size, and that is when the Odin, the Godfather, Thor's father, basically inhabited the destroyer armor and pulled on some extra energy to actually grow to the size and take on the Celestials. Now, there were three Celestials. If you go to the next slide, there were three Celestials that are basically key to the Marvel universe. You have Nezar the Calculator, who basically created the Eternals. You have Zyran the Tester, who created the Deviants, and Oneg the Prober, who basically created the Latents. And what the Latents are known as in the Marvel universe are basically the mutants, like the X-Men, or people who came about their powers because their genes were able to mutate and handle whatever issue was going on, sort of like Dr. Banner and becoming the Hulk, and Peter Parker becoming Spider-Man. So these Celestials, they came to Earth in four hosts. And what Kirby did with the storyline as far as the Celestials that I find interesting is that each one of those four hosts basically came amid a time and period in the evolution of man, and he set the storylines up to basically almost to mimic the stories from all of our creation stories. So if you go back and read the stories on the Celestials and the creation of the Eternals, you'll see that some storylines basically seem like they have been pulled straight from the Christian Bible. Some have been pulled from the Quran. Some have been pulled from Eastern mythologies and so forth. We can go on and jump into the actual team members. Erica, you want to take the first one? Ike Harris.
Good old Icarus. Icarus, aka also known as Ike Harris. So Icarus is considered a prime Eternal. He was the leader of the Earthbound Collective of Eternals. There is a space collective of Eternals that live on one of the moons of Saturn, but we're not going to talk about them today. We're going to talk about the Earthbound ones. So he can fly. He's immune to disease, of course, like all Eternals. He cannot die and sort of, in a sense, be regenerated. But he has flight like the mythical, like mythology's Icarus. So that's where his name came in. And like I said earlier, they kind of get confused with the Greek gods, but that is not on purpose. He can manipulate, he can levitate. He has speeds up to 850 miles per hour. He's supposed to be the fastest flyer of all the Eternals as of right now, but that can always change. Of course, he has telepathy and all of that. He can lift up to 40 tons. He's durable. He can vaporize solid matter with his eyes, as you can see there, the beams of energy. He was an offshoot of humanity, like he was created by the Celestials, but he was born over 20,000 years ago. And his other name was not revealed. All they ever know of, all human beings have ever called him was Icarus. He lives in Olympia. When the continents of Atlantis, when Atlantis was above ground, and Lemera sunk in around 18,500 BC, and the second celestial, I won't say invasion, the second host of celestials showed up, Icarus was the one to carry humans to safety. He guided an ark of refugees, hence kind of what Roland said just a few minutes ago, that mixing of mythology, things from the Bible, things from the Islamic Quran, like there's a lot of mixture, the Torah, a lot of mixture of it's like he put it into a bowl, Kirby put it into a bowl, mixed it up, and brought out the best of the stories. And that Ark of Refugees and some fellow Eternals, they thought of him as a bird because he kind of sort of looked like a bird. That's how fast he was going. So they started calling him Icarus. He was a part of some of the Ark and some of the other things that when the second Celestials came, some of them were buried within Earth's within Earth. So you have some of those Celestials buried under the pyramids, some of those Celestials buried under the Bay Area of San Francisco. But yes, they're called dreaming Celestials, but we'll get back to them at a later time. Icarus's father is Varco, and his uncle is Valken. And Icarus's father was killed by his father was killed. He was raised by his uncle Valken. His cousin is his cousin is Durag is his cousin. Is that his cousin?
Yeah, I think that's his name.
Yeah. So Valken's son is Drug. Yeah, Drug. Yes. Has a sort of Russian accent to it. Droig. So but he has always been a constant, because he's sort of prime Eternal, constant leader amongst the Eternals. He was not always leader, like prime leader, but he led in ways, especially in battle. And so he has always fought against the deviants, and he has always opposed the deviants, where some of the Eternals do not oppose the deviants, but we will get into them later. But he is good friends with Fastios and Makari. They are some of his older friends. And when the fourth host of Celestials came to Earth again, Icarus was one of the ones that sort of awoke, and he warned the others. He tried to wake the others. So what happened when the fourth host came? Fourth host was coming. At around that time, a lot of the Eternals are dormant. They don't know who they are. They are walking around as humans. The Eternals movie is sort of the storyline, and that's also Neil Gaiman's storyline. And when he rebooted it in 2008, they're walking around as humans, not knowing that they are gods. And when Ikaris is awoken, he tries to wake up the rest of the Eternals, and his human name is Ike Harris around this time. But during this time, he also becomes sort of their quasi leader, because he awakens pretty much the rest of the Eternals that are on Earth that have a body that time. And he is the one that prevents the fourth host of Celestials from arriving. So he's a pretty big deal. He's also going to sort of be a main character in the Marvel movie when it comes out. So I believe he's played by one of the guys from Game of Thrones, Richard Madden, I believe is his name. He's going to be playing him. So it's going to be interesting to see, because they have quite a history. I don't know how they're going to put it all together, but that's all Marvel.
All right. Our next on our list is Ajak. Ajak was known as the Knower. Basically, is a member of what they call the Polar Eternals on Earth. The Eternals are spread out across different regions of the Earth. You have some that are based out of Siberia. You have some that are in the United States and other places. So he's is a member basically of the Polar Eternals, who their outpost basically lies in the Ural Mountains of Russia. It is said that his earliest interactions with humanity occurred in Babylon around 2500 BC, when he was among some of the Eternals who clashed with the Deviants and the warlord Crow. Again, he was active probably around 1200 BC, when Ajak and his brother Arex were active in Greece, where they were known respectively as Ajax the Greater and Ajax the Lesser. Again, in 1000 AD, he came across the world and interacted with the natives of South America. And it is here where he basically assumed the identity of the Incan god, well, the Incan god and the Aztec god. They were both, I can pronounce the Aztec's name, Quetzalcoatl. And basically what he did is he took the advanced knowledge of the Eternals and pretty much gave it to the people. Around this time, this is when the third celestial host came upon the world in order to judge it. And basically, Ajak was the communicator that communicated the will of the celestials and also their threats. And he basically placed himself between humanity and the celestials. Now, at this time, also, the celestials constructed a city, which was in Peru, and it was called the City of the Space Gods. Now, in this City of the Space Gods, Ajak placed himself in the suspended animation and slumber after that third host left. So he was not around until the fourth host came about. And when he was awakened for that, he was awakened by Ikaris. And again, he served as basically the communicator between the celestials and the humans. It's at this time the celestials basically judged in favor of the earth, and they departed. And so basically, with the Earth being safe from the Celestials, Ajax and many of the other Eternals at this time formed. They basically combined their essences to form the Unimind, and what the Unimind was a conglomerate of all the Eternals that could basically take, I don't want to say human form, but it could take a physical form. And it basically, they used this form to basically explore other worlds in the universe. Um, when when they went away to basically to discover new worlds, some things were going on back on Earth that were going to have some dire consequences for Ajax. And what ended up happening is the city of gods, the city of space gods, my mistake, had been overrun by deviants, and the daughter of the human archaeologist that Ajax had befriended, his daughter was killed in that attack. So basically, he went mad and he blamed the Eternals and the Deviants for her death. This archaeologist, basically what he did, he took celestial technology and transformed Ajax into a monster and sent him to slay the offspring of Crow and Thena. As you know, Crow is a deviant, but Thena is a celestial. I mean, not a celestial, an eternal. And so basically, he was doing this not in his with his own will, being forced to do this. You know, he when he was turned back to normal, he found out that basically him being turned to normal had saved though Deborah and Thomas Ritter, who are the children of Crow and Thena. They were able to save them, but they found out. Well, he found out that he had basically killed other children during his hunt, and so he basically chose to not really commit suicide, but to disintegrate himself. Uh, Basically, and he was resurrected again later by Sprite, who is the youngest of the Eternals. And Sprite did this in Sprite did this in an effort to become mortal himself. But when he did this, he awoken the dreaming celestial, and Ajax was cast into the role of a gardener until they restored him back to his normal mind frame. And as basically Ajax is going to come back around and be probably here for the fifth host if they have that in the storyline. As you know, they say that they can't destroy the Eternals, but because every time he feels that he has been wronged or done wrong, Ajax takes himself out of the situation. The last situation, he was mortally wounded, but he was able to regenerate from his injuries. But instead of them giving him his memories back, he received the memories of the Forgotten One, and he was sent to attack Olympia and to try to kill Makkari, on who you will hear from later. All right, and the next up is Sersi.
Sorry about that, but yes, Sersi. Sersi is one of my favorite Eternals to research during all of this. Sersi is only about 5,000 years old. She's not as old as all of the Eternals, but she became legendary around 1300 BC because of the Greek hero, we've all heard of the Odyssey, but Odysseus and his crew. She is she transformed Odysseus's men into his crew into pigs when they got to the island because they were messing with her. So Odysseus did ward her off, but and with the aid of the goddess Athena, the Greek goddess Athena, and Sersi turned the men back to normal. But that is her first sort of introduction into the human world. She is not as she does not really as like her comrades of the Eternals. She prefers to kind of stay out of the skirmishes of human beings. She likes to interact with humans. Think of Rome. Think of Nero burning Rome. She likes that fun. She is known across many millennia. She helped Merlin expose imposters in Camelot. She loved the time she spent in France during the French Revolution. And she has befriended many famous over the years. But she, like I said, she likes a good party and she likes to have a good time. She is a lot of times in history, her and Makari are on again, off again. He saved her a few times when Rome was burning during Nero. Makari is the one who saved her from that. She is in by the time the fourth host of Celestials are coming back, after she's been walking around on Earth for many years, but she also has no memory of being an Eternal also. So she is struggling. She's in New York. She meets Makari again in New York, but he is Mike. He is no, he's not Mike. Makari is, he has another name. He's going by another human name. And she is a party planner. Like she throws huge celebrity parties. She is the in girl, and she and Makari meet again, but they are human. They have no memories of being Eternals. She has a friendship when she becomes that. After she does all this, she entertains with her powers. Her powers is magic. She can basically, and she can get you to pretty much do anything she wants. She is a Circe. Her voice is very welcoming. Her voice can get you to do pretty much anything she wants. She has been romantically linked not only to Makari, but she's been linked to Black Knight, Captain. She pursued a relationship with Captain America at one point in time. She's been an Avenger, but really, her powers have also been able to manipulate other people. People have been able to manipulate her, so she doesn't really hang out with her mates anymore. Like she kind of stays on the human side of things, and she kind of stays to herself because of that. Because she just prefers her life as a socialite, pretty much. She likes to party. She likes to have a good time. So, but she's pretty fun. But when push comes to shove, if she needs to fight, she will.
All right. Next on the list is the Eternal known as Domo. Now, there's not a lot to go on for Domo. Basically, Domo was the administrator of affairs on Olympia. He didn't answer to anybody but the elder Eternal Zurus, and he basically dispensed Zurus's commands to the other Eternals. It is said that he is effectively immortal like the rest of the Eternals and cannot be killed through conventional means. He is also the analog of the DC comic character Metron created by Jack Kirby. And I'll give you exactly what that analog is. Metron is basically was written in as the greatest mind on New Genesis. If you're familiar with the DC universe, New Genesis is the planet or the world that is basically the antithesis of Darkseid's Apocalypse. So Metron, being a new god, he was basically an explorer who just sought scientific knowledge in the further corners of existence. And so Domo is basically Jack Kirby's way of bringing this character into the Marvel universe. And that's Domo.
All right. Back to Makari. So I mentioned Makari a few times in our, both Roland and I have mentioned him, but Makari is one of Earth's Eternals. He was born around 2500 BC in the capital of Olympia. Technology is sort of his. Like I said earlier, each one of them have gifts, things that they like to pursue. Technology is that's what he pursues. But his gift is speed. It is said that he he ran before he even walked, and so he often clashes with the deviants, and he's been around for a lot of Earth's major conflicts, like the Trojan War. He was tutored by the philosopher Plato. He has he was very well known in ancient Greece and in ancient Rome. He's often mistaken at that time for the Greek god of the Olympian god Hermes, or what he was called in Rome was Mercury. So he, and throughout time and history, he's always been linked with Circe. His powers, though, outside of speed, he can change the way he looks. So as he, like all Eternals, he doesn't die. He has complete control over all of his cells. His increased power, he can sort of this cosmic energy that he gives off, as you can see, is sort of like, it looks like lightning, kind of like the Flash. He reminds me a lot of the Flash, but he has total control over his molecular structure, and so he can regenerate his entire body. Extreme temperatures, things like that. He can alter one of the things he can do that's really cool is he can alter his physical features, and over the years he's changed his eye color, he's changed his skin pigmentation, he's changed his muscle stature. And so in the process of that, like I said, because he can do that, I think one of the cool things about him is he can change what he looks like. It wasn't really covered a lot in Neil Gaiman's The Eternals, but I think with the new movie Marvel is coming up with, Makari is played by a woman, and not only is he played by a woman, but it is going to be a woman of color, and she is deaf. So I'm excited to see what that storyline is going to be like, because it's never been portrayed in the comics as that. But from what we know of his powers, he can do that. Some of the sacrifices to get to be the fastest live is some of his other powers that he has, like transformation and all these other things, total mental control. Some of those things have been lessened because of his literally wanting to be the fastest, and he has at times had to slow himself down because he doesn't like to mess with the time. Like, he's so fast that he is literally kind of like sometimes what the Flash will do, and he travels back in time. Makari can do the same thing. When the fourth host of Celestials came to judge humanity's worthiness yet again, he and Makari clashed with his then rival Hermes. He was supposed to have left Earth with some of the Eternals that went to space, but he decided to stay and continue to challenge his limits of speed and streamline his abilities to become faster and faster. Over the time, he has, like I said, he was in Rome for the Great Fire. He's the one who saved Circe. He has been at the Battle of Vlad the Impaler, who is now known as Vampire Dracula. He was around during that time. He also was around during the Battle of the Alamo in 1836. Like he's World War II. He's been around for quite a while, uh, making himself known. And during World War II, he was the one that was given he was given the task to watch Crow during World War II. Thena and her father, Zurus, gave him the task of keeping an eye on Crow because Crow was up to something at that time. And so he was following Crow around, but he had altered his appearance to look more human and he was going by a different name. And what he was supposed to do was eliminate Crow's schemes by reporting back to the Eternals. And around this time is also when they started calling him Mercury. And another nickname for him was Hurricane during this time. But he was going by Harry Kane during World War II, and he befriended a lot of other quote unquote speedsters of the Marvel universe. One by the name of Speedy. So they've been around, they've been interacting with humans, but his gift of speed is one of the things that makes him, and the fact that he stayed on Earth the entire time. He has been, his molecules have been, jumbled up and he's died at times, but he always seems to come back. And so right now he's back and he is hopefully, can't wait to see the movie so we can see what his new um, features look like.
All right. Next up, we have Thena, a second generation Eternal. Basically, the eldest daughter of Zurus, the leader of the Eternals on Earth. Over 4,000 years old, still considered to be a young woman by Eternal standards. And at birth, she was named Azura. So you will hear her called Azura in the comics, and you will hear her called Thena. Now, basically, like it was mentioned before, over the years, the humans came to think of several of the Eternals not as representatives of the Olympian gods, but as the gods themselves. And so Azura was basically constantly mistaken for the goddess Athena. This led to a war between the Greek gods and the Eternals at one time. It was in ancient times that Athena first encountered Crow, the warlord of the Deviants. Basically, they became strongly attracted to each other, even though that their two people were often in conflict. She even accompanied Crow to the Deviant cities on the undersea continent of Lemuria. Basically, that tour ended badly along with their relationship. Lemuria is one of the cities that were sunk by the Celestials during the second host. Um, she basically has not seen Crow for a millennium and believed him to be dead. But he is a long-lived one, deviant, more so, and so their paths will cross again. It was at one point that the Eternals encountered the Inhumans, basically a race of humans whose powers had come from experiments by the extraterrestrial Kree. Thena joined the Eternals in helping the Inhumans relocate their city of Adelan from the North Atlantic Ocean to the Himalayan mountains. It was after the arrival of the fourth host of the Celestials, the Eternals and Deviants decided to reveal their existence to humanity. And it was at this time that Athena publicly revealed herself to be an Eternal, even though the general public didn't, just basically disbelieved the existence of the super races. It was at this point in time when she encountered Crow again, and they went exploring a deviant outpost beneath New York City. and they were aided against the deviants that they found there with the help of Thor. And at this time, Thor returned to Olympia with the Eternals and fought by their side when Odin sided with the Olympian gods in assaulting the home of the Eternals, believing that the Eternals were pawns of the Celestials. Later on, Thena became, basically claimed the full power and the title of Prime Eternal in her father's stead, but fell up under, basically, she was being mind controlled by Crow. And at this time, Crow became the deviant ruler. But in seeing that the true power to the throne did not lie in being the king, but it lay with the priesthood, Crow decided to basically go. Hold on one second. I got my notes mixed up. It wasn't not Crow. Icarus led the Eternals against the Deviants. Basically, after Thena had asked them not to interfere. It was Thena herself who helped Crow escape from Icarus. And when it was revealed that her deception, when she revealed her deception, she also helped Crow escape the priesthood. They basically found themselves being pursued by the Eternals and the Deviants. And it's at this time that Icarus basically bested Thena in combat and took the title of Prime Eternal. When this, who is he, a deviant named Gar tried to revive the Dreaming Celestial, that rogue Celestial that we were talking about before, basically, Crow had to remove that brain control so Thena could regain her full power and prevent the Celestials awakening. When the Eternal Sprite sought to become mortal so that he could enjoy an ordinary life, he manipulated the Dreaming Celestial to refashion all of Earth's Eternals into humans with manufactured memories, ordinary lives, and no recollection of who or what they truly were. This is when Thena became Dr. Thena Elliott. I believe this is probably going to play out in the movie.
Yeah, this is excuse me. This is the storyline that that Neil Gaiman does. He
Right.
creates this new storyline for them. That Dr. Elliott, like anything that deals with Sprite, is that Neil Gaiman storyline.
Okay.
So it's sort of the third revival, the third revival of the Eternals.
Yeah. So and it's okay. So right here, they're saying that she basically becomes an inventor employed by Anthony Stark.
Yeah. So they had to. That's the thing about their story, because when he wrote it, Kirby wrote it, it was not a part of the sort of, he didn't really tie it into the Marvel, like the other heroes weren't there. It was a lot of Greek gods, Roman gods, different things throughout history. He was sort of telling the history of Earth, basically, the history of mankind, how we got to they said at the time there was a book that came out that was trying to say that in the 70s that was written called The New Gods, that said that basically mankind came from the aliens.
Right.
So Jack Kirby was really he really liked that theory of maybe aliens did it, hence the whole Celestials. But when Neil Gaiman got around to it, that story of Sprite comes along. Now he doesn't throw any of the other stuff out. He just adds this story of Sprite and this how we're going to tie. They asked him to tie it into Marvel Universe.
Right.
So how do we tie this in? Well, Civil War had just happened, so it was easy to tie it into the Civil War. Right. She works for Tony, who is working technically for the government.
Right. Right. It says that basically that's while they were attending a party at a at a foreign embassy or whatever. They are attacked by terrorists,
Mm.
and her husband is killed, and she's taken captive.
Yeah.
But right, this is where she's saved by Iron Man, and after she's saved, she starts regaining her memory
Yep.
and access to her powers. And this is when they start awakening. Well, the rest of the Eternals who have awakened basically are gearing up to confront the dreaming Celestial, which is basically asleep underneath the earth.
Yeah. Underneath San Francisco.
Right.
Mhm.
And it's through Makari that they basically find out that this celestial is going to awaken and begin a new judgment on earth without his brethren.
Mhm.
So
Yes. And as you can see, she's holding her son there, Joey. Not
right.
the other son. She has two other children with Crow, but this one is the one actually with Thomas.
Yeah, and this is the one that she also brought to the
Yeah.
eternal homeland.
Yeah.
Yes.
Against her father's wishes.
Right.
So hopefully in this next rebirth, we'll kind of see what happens to Joey, because her father was concerned, and I'm just going to jump right into her dad, Zurus. Her father was concerned about the fact that a human being raised amongst gods or godlike creatures, because he is not a god, he is a human. So he will age like a human, he will have human problems. And because they've been around for so long, he doesn't really think, he almost compares it to having an animal, like a dog or something. And
Right.
he doesn't think that they belong in Olympia. He doesn't think humans belong in Olympia. But Zurus is the first. That is what it means, the first here. He's the father of Athena, leader of Eternal's Earth. He has a similar resemblance to the Greek god Zeus. So when the deal is made between the Greek gods, Roman gods / Roman gods, Zurus and Athena attend that meeting, and as I said earlier, they are mistaken. The Eternals are a lot of times mistaken for the gods, because what they did is they made a pact with the gods, and they said, hey, because people keep mistaking us, we will be your human representation. Like when the humans see us, they will think of you. And at first the gods thought it was a great thing. But then later on, as centuries move on and things happen, there's a jealousy that comes in there. So the Greek gods are still there, but the Greek gods at different times have been forgotten. But the Eternals are continuously, they're still being, they're still popping up all over Earth in different centuries and different times. So the humans still think of them as the gods. So the Greeks the gods get jealous, and there's a lot of infighting and amongst them, fighting between them. But Zurus here, he's their leader, but he is sort of his molecules are disintegrated after the fourth celestial hosts come down. This is what Roland was talking about earlier, between Thor coming and helping the Eternals, and then his father siding with, I believe his father sided with the Celestials. Odin sided with Celestials, and so in that fight, when they're checking out an outpost of deviants in New York City, Zurus is killed, and Zurus passes his leadership, his role as leader, to his daughter Athena, and tells them that they need to. This is when he tells them they probably need to go to space, because their time on Earth is no longer here. But he's disintegrated. But he comes back. He also comes back again when Icarus starts waking people up, when Sprite, does his thing to make them forget who they are. There's a shift in the Earth's atmosphere that happens during that time, around the time that most of the Eternals that are walking around in modern day happen. And that shift causes Zerus's molecules to come back together, and he comes back and he remembers who he is. Been walking around. When he came back together, he starts walking around as a homeless man in New York. And he doesn't know who he is until that shift happens, and it jogs his memory. And he then is back on Olympia, ruling next to his. He's not ruling at this point because Icarus is prime eternal right now, but he is still revered amongst the Eternals as sort of their father, like their Zeus.
All right. Real quick, we'll jump into this. This one doesn't really have an entry. It's just a like we said before, the Unimind is a combination or a form that the Eternals can, through ritual, basically almost they can meld themselves together and become this one entity. They use this entity to basically traverse the universe, to explore new worlds, and also it is the form that they have to take when they converse with the Celestials. And basically, this form has been used, like I said before, for them to explore the cosmos, and I think that's all they use it for. I've never, in the stories that I read, they've never used it for anything else other than to converse and explore. So that's the Unimind. In the adversary, I'll start.
Okay.
Okay. So the first adversary that we're going to look at is Crow. Crow was born a deviant. He is basically, by deviant standards, he is a deviant mutant, as he has already lived 3 times as long as any deviant known. He is basically a warlord and a frequent leader of the deviant armies. Over the years, he has practiced and studied the ways of war, and that is basically his specialty. Now, during, like we said before, during some point in his career, he had a brief affair with the Eternal Athena, and to this point is the only such union known between the two divergent human races. Crow has carefully guarded the secret of his longevity by taking periodic sabbaticals from his kinsmen for fear that he would be subjected to genetic experimentation by those who wish to possess his mutant trait themselves. And it is said now that the next character is not the current leader of the demons, but it is, and we can step to Brother Toad, who does not have a large entry either, as there is not that much information on Brother Toad. But Brother Toad was the leader of the deviant monarchy. I believe it said that he was probably like the third in line, in the third set of family monarchies that have ruled the deviants over the years. But it was under Toad that the deviants actually gained technology and their current armaments. We can go to the next one.
Oh, Drug. That's how you pronounce it, right? Drug. The manipulator. Yeah. So Drug is not, he's not deviant. He's actually he's an eternal. But he's an eternal that he sees himself as better than the rest of the Eternals, basically. He has sought personal power at the expense of his fellow Eternals, fellow mankind. So he is cousins with Icarus. He's Icarus' cousin. But when after around 1000 BC, you have him, Falcon, Ajax, Barco. They visit Peru and prevented the mind control of one of the Asgardian gods, Thor Odin, from freeing an imprisoned deviant, Dromondan. So that mixes in with sort of that Marvel universe of you have Thor, you also have Doctor Strange there. He is for himself, always been for himself. He will fight with his fellow Eternals if it benefits him. And he stood out on the sidelines of some fights too. He is jealous, extremely jealous of his cousin Icarus, to the point where he has tried to kill Icarus a few times. When the fourth host of Celestials came, when his mind was wiped, he didn't quite know who he was, but he was still up to the same shenanigans as usual, aka the manipulator. So he was based in the Soviet Union. The party that Cersei threw for him, he hired Cersei to throw a party. Now, he does not know who he is. None of them at this point in time know who they are, but he's from he's prime minister of Vorzakia. It's in the former Soviet Republic. He is prime minister to this place. He basically brings all of the scientists, the smartest people in the room, to this party in order to kidnap them and murder them. He has his reasons, but in the process of this is also the time where Icarus is going around trying to wake people up from their eternal sleep of knowing who they are. He is also awoken from this, and so when he has captured all the scientists, one of those was Thena. She is saved by Tony Stark and some of the Avengers, but Druig gets away, and he is able to continue his terrorist raid on mankind, and also know now that he is a Eternal. So when he does that and he gets all his memories back, his coup is ruined, but he does decide to, even though his coup is ruined and he knows who he is now, he does decide to fight beside his fellow Eternals to stop that dreaming Celestial from waking up in San Francisco Bay. So he does fight by their side, but when the crisis is averted, he goes right back to threatening the home of Olympia. So he is one of their, like I said, should be a brother in arms, but yet master manipulator, who is always seeking power for himself. So, and he's also trying to kill Thena's son, Joey. So that is the Eternals. That is all of the Eternals, technically. Roland, you and I were talking about this, but a lot of times there are not really a lot of they don't have a lot of enemies, right? Because they are so.
It's a lot of infighting.
Yeah, they fight amongst themselves a lot. So that's why it's going to be interesting now that they are bringing them into the Marvel Universe, and you see them, including them in this phase 4 of the Marvel Universe. And so because of all of their infighting and their history amongst one another, I don't know. Like I said, you have them interacting with Thor, you have them interacting with a being that is from Doctor Strange, but never interacted with Doctor Strange. But I'm sure the multiverse is going to have something to do with that. Yeah. But they're infighting, and they're I guess in the sense the deviants that they fight against. And little FYI, who is also a deviant, and we've met in the Marvel Universe, is Thanos. But
Right.
Thanos is deviant and part eternal. So yeah, it's
Yeah,
interesting.
I want to see how they set it up because I feel like what they're setting up is that age old storyline of man being caught between the machinations of the gods and the higher powers.
Yeah.
And I think that that's what they're setting up because if you notice in DC Comics has already basically um, through Wonder Woman has utilized the Greek
Yes.
gods basically. So
Yes.
this is their way of doing it, but taking it off world because
Hmm.
if you think about it, they can the Eternals can represent almost every pantheon out there.
Hmm.
We already have the Norse gods represented by Thor and Asgard.
Yeah.
But then with this, uh, some of them represent ancient Samaria. Some of
Hmm.
them represent biblical stories. And I think that's gonna open the MCU up a whole lot
Yeah. I
for
would
this.
I would have loved to have seen the New Gods, that what he
Oh yeah,
created for DC. And
right,
I think we have a copy here somewhere of, like, it only ran for I think it only ran for like a few issues, like
right.
canceled it mid 70s. So it's probably big enough for a graphic novel. But the New Gods, yeah, he pretty much took the story of New Gods and created the Eternals.
Yeah.
So I would love to read that, but oh goodness. All right. So those are our works cited. A lot of works cited. Some good stuff there. Um, got some new releases at the library. Daredevil. This is Daredevil Volume 5, called Truth and Dare. Battle may be over, but Matt Murdock's war is far from finished. After shocking events of Daredevil number 20, the next chapter of the definitive Daredevil saga, Hell and Back. Hell's Kitchen has been lawless in the neighborhood thanks to Storm and Twins, but when the police are finally able to resume their patrols, they're quick to learn that they aren't the only ones interested in keeping the streets safe. After the events of several weeks, Matt Murdock continues to struggle with the best way to appease his sense of justice, but he better think fast because familiar enemy is taking root in the kitchen. And this is collecting Daredevil from 2019 to the Daredevil Annual 2020. So we have about 5 issues being collected in this graphic novel. But Truth and Dare, you can place it on hold because I believe it's checked out right now. The second one is DC's Doomsday Clock. We are taking all of the stories of Doomsday Clock that were issued a couple of years ago, actually. The World of the Watchmen. This is all the World of Watchmen and the World of DC Universe come together with Doomsday Clock. Jeff Johns is writing, and Gary Frank is illustrating this. But Jeff Johns may notice his name from the CW. He's producer of a lot of. Not only is he comic book writer, but he's producer on a lot of the CW shows that you see. But the Doomsday Clock ticks towards midnight, and DC Universe will encounter its greatest threat, Dr. Manhattan. But nothing is hidden from Manhattan, and the secrets of the past, present, and future will leave ramifications on all of our heroes' lives. Nothing is ever really ends. The world of the Watchmen collides with the DC Universe after 7 years. 7 years after the events of Watchmen, Adrian Veidt has been exposed as a murderer to millions. He's the one who blew up New York. If you haven't read Watchmen, go read it. He's now a fugitive, and he has come up with a new plan to redeem himself in the eyes of the world. His first step is finding Dr. Manhattan. Alongside a new Rorschach and a never-before-seen mime and marionette, he follows Dr. Manhattan's trail throughout the DC Universe, which is on the brink of collapse as international tensions push the Doomsday Clock closer to midnight. Is this all Dr. Manhattan's doing? So this is a combination of Watchmen. This is a combination of the DC Universe Rebirth, Batman and Flash, and it's a lot of stuff collected into one. So I'm excited to read this one. I actually started reading it, and I think I'm halfway through it. It's very interesting how they pick back up from Watchmen and to create this one. So very, very interesting. And it ties into, you have the Rebirth tie-in, but it also ties into Future State. So it's one of those in-betweens you can read between Rebirth and Future State, DC. And the last one here is Adventure Man, Volume 1. Matt Fractions wrote with this one. Where his story ends, her story begins. Everyone knows the story of how Adventure Man, the greatest pulp hero, ended in heartbreak and a heartbreaking cliffhanger, with our hero facing execution on the eve of the Macropolis. I don't know what that is, but now learn the startling truth about how 80 years after his seemingly demise, single mother Claire and her adventure fan son Tommy seek to spark his resurrection. Can these inheritors of Adventure Man legacy rise up and face evil of their own that bested the original? So those are some new picks at the library available. Doomsday Clock and Adventure Man, I think, are available to check out when I checked on it earlier. But Daredevil, you'll have to place on hold. Up next, Roland.
Oh, Swamp Thing, DC Swamp Thing.
Yes, in light of, in honor of Earth Day, we're going to be covering Swamp Thing here. I know Earth Day is Friday, but we're going to be covering them on May 4th. So look out for that. We get to go into the swamp with Swamp Thing and all of his, he's part of the Justice League Dark. So, but he's been around a lot on his own. So.
And for those of you that will be mad that we're not going to do a Star Wars thing, we don't even have a Star Wars book to read. How about that? Just joking.
We have plenty of Star Wars books to read. But I didn't even think of that for May 4th. As you can tell, I am not I've seen the Star Wars. I've enjoyed the Star Wars, but I have not read any of the books or graphic novels. We do have a few of the graphic novels. In honor of them, I'll make sure to put some up for our staff picks next time.
All right.
But all right.